This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. All right, folks. So very good. So we're looking at chapter 4. We're going to be finishing up chapter 4 today. And so you'll see here, as far as the PowerPoint, everybody's got a PowerPoint. Good. So as we go back here for a moment here, let's see here. So let's go back to the title for a moment here. So we're looking at tissues, organs, and organ systems. Last class, we actually talked about and discussed the organ system. Remember, I gave you that this curly nerve, right? So I told you that. I said, use that. That can be helpful as far as remembering the body system. So let's just take a moment and just review that. So we had MSCURLI and then NERD, right? So we said that the M stands for the muscular system, right? Muscular system. The S, skeletal. So actually the next chapter that we'll be looking at, chapter 5, will be the skeletal system that we'll be reviewing, okay? C, cardiovascular. And we went over these, and you're going to have an assignment that I'm going to give you all that you'll be kind of doing a little bit of a review of this. U for urinary. R for respiratory. So L for lymphatic. I for the, is it for the immune system? Integumentary, good. So the skin, the integumentary system. Integumentary. Then we have N for the nervous system. E for the endocrine system. R for the reproductive, male and female. And D for digestive. Okay. So those are the body systems. I reviewed those last class, so I'm not going to really go much into them at this point in time for this class, okay? But we are going to go step by step over the first few slides here. And you'll recall that we said that with this chapter, we're looking at the epithelium, we're looking at the integumentary system is a very much a part of what goes on as far as tissues are concerned. I don't know if you recall that I said to you that we have, as far as structure is concerned, right? So we have the organism, the human, right? The human body. And I said that that organism is composed of organ systems. That's what we're looking at here. When we talk about the organ system, we're looking at this curly nerve, right? Muscular, skeletal, cardiovascular, urinary, respiratory, lymphatic, integumentary, nervous, endocrine, reproductive, and digestive system. Those are all organ systems. Those organ systems can be composed of organs. And then what are the organs comprised of, made up of, right? Tissues, very good. And the tissues are made up of cells. Excellent. Okay? So when you're looking at these tissues and talking about them a little bit more, we started to last class there when we were looking at seeing here as far as so epithelium, epithelial tissue is a type of tissue that covers and lines most of the body. So your skin, the integument, is made up of a type of epithelial tissue. Okay? Lining cavities and tubes. So we have throughout the body all kinds of tubes, right? Because what are we doing? The human body produces chemicals, has blood flowing throughout it, and how does this blood travel through? We know blood vessels. But these blood vessels, right? They're hollow, so they're going to have this lumen. Remember, I said to you that the inner portion of the tube, we would say is a lumen, right? So within that lumen, within the inner portion of that tube, inside of that tube is going to be lined. Outside of the tube, there's going to be some type of line. Outside of the different organs that we have present in the body, will be covered in composed of different types of tissues. Okay, that's the liver. That's the gallbladder right there. Gallbladder. That's the liver. Stomach. Right. So, and we looked a little bit at the stomach there last class. So I'm just talking about these in a little bit vague details. You'll see the brain over there also. So these different organs are composed of tissues. Okay? So these tissues have specific function. So I know that I said last class, and I think this is important for you to get a grasp right from the very beginning, that structure determines function. If you didn't write that down, write that down today. So structure determines function. Okay? That's important because whatever those organs that I showed you over there, whatever the tubes that I talked about, so I showed the class there like this paper towel and just showing you the lumen, the inner portion of this tube can represent a blood vessel, can represent a lymphatic vessel carrying lymph, blood vessel carrying blood, right? These different types of structures all contain different types of tissues, okay? So it's not just the heart is just made up of cardiac muscle and that's it. There's many other types of tissues. So all the organs of the body are composed of all these different types of tissues, okay, that have different types of roles. So the structure of these tissues, right, will help determine the function of the tissue itself, as well as the different organs that they're composed of, okay? So how about, let's think about like skeletal muscle. So skeletal muscle, when you think of muscle, you think of either the heart muscle or skeletal muscle. So look over here. We got so we have an arm, right? A leg over here. Muscle. Price allowed for it, you to be able to do that, right? Think about this for a moment. We call it skeletal muscle. How do we call it skeletal muscle? All right, so why would we call it skeletal muscle? What do you think? Sure, it's actually attached to the bone, right? So what goes on is that you'll have, see the white on this muscle, bicep breakdown. So you all do this and you know, hey, if I do a curl, right, I'm exercising the biceps breakdown. Well, what's that white part there? That white part, is it a ligament or is it a tendon? Muscles anchored to bone, right? You ever had somebody say, oh, you know, oh, I have tendonitis, doctor? So got an inflammation of those tendons. Okay, so skeletal muscle, when it contracts, what is it moving? What is skeletal muscle moving when it contracts? So watch me, right? So I'm being all weird here. I'm like, oh, contracting these muscles. I'm doing what I'm doing. But what am I moving when I contract these muscles? Because I can consciously think about it and contract. What do you think? If I call it skeletal muscle, I'm moving the bones, exactly. Yeah. So that's why. So it's connected to the bones. It's moving the bones. So that's why we would call it skeletal muscle, right? And so this skeletal muscle can not only shorten and contract and move the bone, right? But it also has the ability to be stretched, right? And there's a very durable type of muscle, this skeletal muscle. And so, and you can what? You can consciously control it. I think about it, and I'm able to move around the room here because I'm consciously contracting those muscles. So the structure will determine the function of whatever it is that we're talking about in the human body throughout this whole semester. Okay, so I want you to keep that in mind. So we talked about the epithelium, and we talked about that there was simple, and stratified. I said to you that tissue, so look over here. Tissue is made up of cells, right? So tissue is comprised of cells. Now, some of these tissues have one layer. Some of them have multiple layers. Multiple layers would mean they're stratified. There's multiple layers. One layer, it means we would say it's simple. We would say there's only one layer, simple. That's how we determine that as far as when we try to name a type of tissue, we would say it's a simple type of tissue. So simple epithelium, one layer, and it's the thinnest type of epithelium. So that what would it do then? It would allow for movement of material back and forth. So say, how about movement of gases back and forth in the lungs, right? How about movement from the blood to outside of the blood to the tissues? Would that make sense, right? For blood vessels like capillaries, very tiny blood vessels. So interesting how simple, one layer, is very interesting and very helpful. That structure determines its function, allowing for materials to diffuse, move in and out of the vessels and such. Okay. Now, how about when we said pseudostratified? You'll see there, pseudostratified. Well, what does that mean? That means that it looks like it's multiple layers, but it's not. Okay. So that's how we know when we're talking about these different types of tissues. And here's another thing. I can tell you this, never in my life was I able to do something like that. Some people, it's amazing, right? I took care of quite a few people who were gymnasts, right? And into gymnastics and such, and some that were very competitive and such. Different athletes like swimmers and such, and bodybuilders and weightlifters and wrestlers. And yeah, it was pretty cool in my practice as far as being able to take care of multiple types of patients and injuries that they might deal with. And yeah, never in my life was I able to do something like that. But as you're looking at that person there, you're seeing that really just a matter of that the different types of tissues can allow for us to do different types of activities and functions, okay? And what you're also seeing here is that there's an example of how we would name the tissues. So not only just simple, pseudostratified, and stratified, but also the actual shape of the different cells that make up these tissues. All right, so let's look here. So you remember this, we talked about this. So we can have these pancake shaped, which would actually be kind of like thin, lateral side view, cube shaped. So this would be called squamous. This would be called cuboidal because it's cube shaped. And this would be called columnar. It's column shaped, it's rectangular. And remember, whenever I draw something like this, the N represents the nucleus, okay? The nucleus of that cell, right? So if we have one layer of tissue, so let's do this here. Let's do I'm not going to continue to draw the ends, right? But you get the deal. What would that be represented right there? Okay, let's just move this for a moment here and just so that they can see. So this would represent one layer of columnar. So we would say it's simple columnar type of a tissue. And in particular, we're talking about this epithelial tissue. So look on right here, folks. I'm just going to highlight this here. So this right here, simple columnar. Right here, simple columnar, right? Column shape. But if there were multiple layers, they'd be on top of one another. that would be stratified. Okay? Where do you think in the body, in the human body, we would have multiple layers of cells that would allow for, so, okay, go ahead, please. Skin, correct, yes. So you'll see this tissue right over here. So you see how these cells are kind of like compressed? They're flattened, right? So what goes on is that your skin is constantly having dead cells come on. Okay? We talked about that last time. We said, you look at like the dark room, you have some light coming into the room, and you see in the light, you see these little particulate matter, dust, right? Most of that dust is like dark skin, most of it. And so that's what you're seeing. And so the cells on your skin, right, they're multiple layers. Okay? Like multiple, grab one of these, man. Grab one of these and put it in there. For your abbreviation here. So the skin, multiple layers, it allows for protection. Right? That's pretty good. How about inside of your throat, right? In your oral cavity and your esophagus? Do you think that those areas should have multiple layers? Because, you know, have you ever had some pizza? Okay, nobody's had pizza. You will have pizza. And it's real hot and like so hungry. And you eat it, right? What happens inside of your mouth, your oral cavity? Doesn't it get like kind of burned and like kind of takes some layers? Not so good. But it's a good thing though that it was multiple layers of skin cells in there, so that you could actually then, you know, it takes the abuse to protect you, and yet you're still not, you know, going through your cheek, right? There's multiple layers. That happens throughout the body. So multiple layers, protection, protective mechanism. That's a good thing. Okay. So we will actually in the class here in the lab, and maybe even this. I think we're going to do it this Thursday. We're going to do take a swab inside of our. Well, actually, we'll take like a toothpick, and we'll remove some cells within inside of our cheek in our mouths, and then we're going to create slides, and we're going to stain them, and you'll be able to take a look at them and such, and see the interesting. And we're going to look at some slides and such, and do some microscopy in the lab on this Thursday. So those at home, I'll have you doing some assignments that'll correspond with that. All right, so on. So this slide just here just reviews and goes over as far as what we're looking at as far as the location of these different types of cells and tissue. So simple, pseudostratified, and stratified. Where are they going to have more? So look here as far as the stratified, skin, mouth, throat. Those are going to have multiple layers, allowing for protection. And then we ended with this slide last class. So we were talking about glands. Now, when I put up on the board here, Miss Curly Nerd, right? So the E represents the endocrine system. So the endocrine system deals with, contains glands, structures that actually will produce secretions that are going to be endocrine type glands that will produce these secretions, which are hormones, chemical messengers. They're going to travel through the body, right, in the cardiovascular system in the blood, and go from one area of the body to another to cause some type of change to occur. So you'll see here the endocrine says make hormones that are released directly into the surrounding fluid, into the bloodstream, and make some type of change. So you all heard of like thyroid hormone, right? Have you heard of thyroid hormone? So thyroid hormone is a major metabolic hormone. Okay, big deal. What does that mean? Well, what that means, folks, is that thyroid hormone, it really helps to keep the body working. Now, it can either accelerate or it can slow down what goes on with the body. So, think of thyroid hormone, right? If I have too much of it, it's like a gas pedal, right? In your car. And you press on the gas pedal really fast, but you're going faster than what you need to be going, right? And kind of like accelerates all the activities of the human body. That's hyperthyroid. We'll talk about that. you might have seen some of hyperthyroidism. If they have like your eyes, they express something called exophthalmos. Your eyes can open. That could be a symptom of hyperthyroidism. Hypothyroidism. It's different, right? So one is if I have too much hormone, it's definitely accelerated. Not good. How about if I have hypothyroidism? I have too little thyroid hormone. So too little thyroid hormone means you have hypothyroidism, and it's going to be the opposite of hyperthyroidism in that you're going to be slowed down. Your skin's going to be affected as a result of this. Many of the activities of your body are going to slow down a bit. You're going to be lethargic and have fatigue, be tired a lot. Hypothyroidism. So thyroid hormone, major metabolic hormone, very important for the function of the human body. So that's just one example. Growth hormone. How about estrogen, testosterone? These are all hormones and such, right? Exocrine, this is a little bit different, right? So this is a type of gland. You'll see here, exocrine releases substances through these ducts or tubes. So again, we're thinking of a tube, a duct, D-U-C-T, right? A tube. And so what will happen is that your body is producing, say, sweat. How about saliva? How about oils for your hair, skin? Those are examples of, how about earwax? Examples of secretions that are exocrine function. How about breast milk? You know that that's also considered exocrine function and the production of breast milk. So this is, because what happens with breast milk is that, think about this for a moment, the milk is produced, and then where does it leave? It leaves through these little tubes within the breast that will eventually then exit out of the nipple. So interesting. So exocrine, endocrine type glands. Next slide. So we are going to take a break at 2:55. Okay, we're going to take a break at 2:55. I have to go to a quick meeting. So I'll either be about 2:15 on the dot or 2:30. Trying to be back at 2:30. If I'm not back at 2:30, I'll be back at 2:15. Now I'll be back at 2:30 later. Okay? I provided these all for you. So those of you in class, so you have here the microscope, you have the skin, and you have this other handout, right? Talking to you about superior, inferior, talking about proximal and distal, and anterior, posterior, right? You will take these and you'll define these terms. So I want you to define these terms. I want you to label this image, and you're going to label this after you take your break. So you take a 2-minute break, then come back and start working on this until I come back. Okay? All right, good. Question? Yes, yes. So only that one, only that image right there with the body image and such. Yes, so you'll do that. So folks online, I just want to let you know. So 2:55, I have to take a break for about 20 minutes or so, 15, maybe possibly a half hour. I'm going to stop recording at that time, and I'll do a second recording once I come back. Okay, because it'll be too much of a gap there. So I'll record 2 sessions, so an A and a B for today's lecture. All right, so we're looking at connective tissue. So when you hear the term connective tissue, interesting, right? So if you hear the term connective tissue, it's got to mean that it's going to connect parts of the body to other parts of the body. And so think about this for a moment here. Provides support, protection for the cells, tissues, organs, right? And you're going to see here that there's some loose type of connective tissue and some dense type of connective tissue. And you're going to find out that you know what these are, you just don't have any idea right at the moment here. But let's take a look and see. So the loose type is flexible, the dense type, less flexible. We're going to see this next slide here. And you're going to see examples of what's taking place within this type of tissues. So cartilage, folks, a type of connective tissue. Bone, a type of connective tissue. Fat, also known as adipose tissue. How about blood? That's a weird thing, right? We call blood a fluid connective tissue because really what it does is it does provide transport materials from one area to another, whether it's those hormones or whether it's nutrients, food, or whether it's gases, right? And it's taking them and then removing waste products and such, whatever they may be, gases or particulate matter, right? And it's connecting all aspects of the human body to itself. There's a, has anybody ever been to one of the bodies exhibits for the actual cadavers that they would have? And so what did you think as far as when you went to go see it? It's pretty wild. So they actually have, and I'll next class I'll show you that there's actually a way of, it's called plastination. It's a process they call plastination that they preserve these bodies and such. And so there are preserved bodies that they have primarily, it's like maybe an eye and a brain and maybe a little bit of fingers. And then the rest is just all blood vessels. And that's it. And it's wild. It's fascinating stuff. And but to look at it though and see that, hey, you realize that the cardiovascular system using the blood vessels transports blood throughout the whole body. If you have an area of the body where you limit the amount of blood flow, what's going to happen to that tissue that's not getting proper blood flow? Death, right? It's going to die. So how about in the case of when people are in a very cold environment, a frostbite, what happens to the tissue? They'll actually turn, over time, they'll turn black. They'll get very red, and then they'll change colors, and then they'll turn black. Whenever you see black tissue on the body, now, like if you have a mole, that's a different thing. But actual like areas of the skin that are black, very bad. Okay, that would be the necrotic tissue, dead tissue. In the case of patients who have diabetes, all right, their blood flow as a result of the whole process, and we'll talk about diabetes in a little bit more detail, but know that folks that have diabetes, they have issues with blood flow throughout the body, circulation, and as well as neurological nerve type issues. But what will happen many times is that patients that have diabetes, if they damage a part of their extremity, like say their feet in particular, does it heal as quickly as someone like you or I that's healthy? Not so much, not so much. And what will occur is that they can end up having issues where it won't heal at all, and then they can end up having parts of their body have to be removed, amputated, because it's dying tissue, it's not getting the blood flow, it's not healing, and this can lead to more infection that can spread throughout the whole body. Yeah, diabetes is not a good, it's a pretty nasty illness. So here we have some different examples of some different types of tissues. You know, I want to go back to the other slide for one more moment. Go back one more moment and just talk to you about that. So where you see it says collagen, elastin, right? So collagen, these types of fibers are very strong. So it's a type of fiber present within the tissues that really is very strong. Elastin is a type of fiber that can actually stretch and recoil, okay? And so the tissues are made up of these different types of protein fibers that are very important. So when we look at this next image then, what we see is that you see like the dark pink, those represent collagen fibers. And so you're seeing collagen fibers in through here, pink here, the dark pink here, and then those black fibers, those would represent those elastic fibers and such. Okay? And these are just some examples of different types of connective tissue. When I talk about cartilage, What is cartilage? You tell me what is cartilage? Where would I find cartilage? Where is it located? Go ahead. There you go. That's good. So it's a different, so this type of cartilage. So how about this? You know that this type of cartilage for my ear is different than this type of cartilage for my nose. And the type of cartilage that comprises these components, think your vertebral discs in your back, in your spine, that separates bones. That's a different type of cartilage. That type of cartilage is called the fibrocartilage, and it's right over here. That's Tue Sept in the vertebra. Here, this there. It's also on the jaw, right? TMJ. Ever heard that term before? TMJ. Have you ever heard someone say, "I've got a problem with my TMJ"? So your ability to open and close your mouth, that's TMJ. So different types of cartilage. See this cartilage right here that connects the ribs to the sternum? That's a different type of cartilage. That's the same type of cartilage. Your nose. Okay. And the ears, that's an elastic cartilage. Together, the nose, hyaline cartilage. It's different types of cartilage. So you'll see here, not easily compressed. That's a big deal. So, question? Question? No? Okay. It's good to stretch. Absolutely. So can't easily be compressed. So the bones between the cartilage between the bones of your spine, very important that they're tough and that they're durable and that they're not allowing a whole lot of like compression and then staying that way over time. So as a chiropractor, patients that I treated, many, not all, but many, I have so this is a side view of the spine. Say this is L4 and L5. That disc is the cartilage between them, and it really allows for spacing so that a nerve can come off of between each of the vertebrae. The nerve can come off on both sides and allow for the nerve to send electricity, bioelectricity, to your muscles so that you can contract, to the organs so that they can function. Okay, it really does act like electricity for the body. So those discs are very important. If they get compressed, if they get scrunched, right, that's not a good thing, because then what can it lead to? Compression of the nerves coming off of the spine. How about the actual spinal cord itself? Has anybody ever heard of someone who had a compressed disc? Okay, go for it. But they're bulging a bit. So was it as a result of like lifting or as a result? Okay, yeah, yep. So not uncommon. Yeah. Have you had problems in the past? Wow. Okay. Yeah. So. Yeah. So those also. So what he's saying there. So that when I said to you that this disc right here, that's fibrocartilage. So the actual ligaments, not the ligament, the top. Let me show you. So here we have lower extremity. Right. So here's the kneecap. Right on here, right at the plateau of this tibial skull, you're going to have some cartilaginous type material. Okay, and this meniscus is a very tough, durable, like fibrocartilage disc that allows for there to be a cushion for when you're doing what you're doing. Unfortunately, what can happen is that can get damaged as a result of twisting movements and such, and then there's issues with that. And Really, cartilage is hard to repair. Okay, many times if it damages, you actually have to just remove the cartilage. What's another type of connective tissue here? Bone, right? So the skeletal system, like we'll be talking about next chapter, that very hard, very different from cartilage, right? How about adipose tissue? Absolutely different, right? So this type of tissue is soft, and it can act as a and it has the ability to provide nutrition for the patient if they're not eating, right? If there's a period of time where there's food is not present, adipose tissue can be there. How about cushion? Absolutely, adipose tissue. Realize this, folks, that if you were to be in a situation where you were starving, what do you notice about someone's face when they're starving? What do you think? One, it kind of goes in like this, kind of like goes inward, and it kind of feels like, you know, looks like they're just kind of like gaunt. We would use that term. How about their eyes? Do their eyes seem to go inward a bit? That's because there's actual fat. That's a fat that cushions the eyes, and so when that is getting taken care of, it's getting used by the body. It's going to look like they're sunken in a bit. Right? That's not a good thing. Also, what can occur is that look over here at this model. What we'll see is that for people who are lose weight very quickly, they can have an issue. So here, right here, this brown structure is often from the around. So you see that brown structure right there? That's the kidney. There's one over here on this side. So kidney right there. There's two of them. Not everybody has two, right? Some people only have one. They might have a large one, different types of anatomical variants. So you see this beige tube on both sides. So that's going to drain the urine from the kidneys. Now the kidneys are held in place also. There's some fat cushion there. And if a patient loses too much weight very quickly, then the kidneys can do what? They can drop a little bit. And if they do that, that can do what to a tube? Can that cause like a kink in a tube a bit? Can that cause problems with that? Absolutely. And that can lead to actually a backup of urine into the kidneys, which can be a bad thing. So adipose tissue, fat, is a very important part of our body. Blood, I said that blood was a fluid connective tissue, right? And so it really will help to bring all the parts of the body together and transport all kinds of nutrients and waste and removal of waste and movement of solid and liquid and particulate as well as gases. So the muscular system. So I already said to you about skeletal. That was one muscle, type of muscle. Contracts, it will do what? It will move the skeleton. How about smooth muscle and cardiac muscle? Well, cardiac we get, because cardiac we think of the heart, right? So actually cardiac muscle, that's primarily what the heart is composed of, made up of. But smooth muscle, where do you think you find smooth muscle? What do you think? Where do you think you might find smooth muscle? Because there's other areas of the body where you're not thinking about contracting muscle, and yet that happens. How about in your digestive system, right? In your digestive system, your body is moving material from one area to another. And so smooth muscle needs to be present within the digestive system to move that material. Anywhere in the body that you're not actually consciously thinking about contracting muscle, but muscle is present other than the heart, it's going to be smooth muscle. So blood vessels have smooth muscle, right? All areas of the body, organs, your organs all have the smooth muscle present. So skeletal, smooth, cardiac. So skeletal, it's voluntary. Smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, it's involuntary. You don't control it. I don't think about moving the blood throughout my body other than if I'm exercising, then it's going to actually do that. But you can't control that consciously. So here we go. This just gives you a little bit of an idea. talks about it in a little bit more detail regarding what goes on as far as the different types of muscles are concerned. Skeletal, smooth, cardiac muscle, and the different locations of them that we mentioned. There you're seeing actually here we go. So here you're actually seeing an example of where they're located, where they can be located, the different types, and what they look like. They're kind of different as far as the slides are concerned. So when we talk about histology, we're looking at the study of tissue. So this term, histology, is the study of tissue. Okay, so you write that down, please. Histology, it's the study of tissues. So you're looking at an example of each of these different types of tissues while you're looking at that image there, okay? Histology. I'll give you another word. How about the study of cells? Cytology. The study of cells is called cytology. Right now, moving on to nervous tissue. So when we think of the nervous system, you're thinking of the part of the body that really controls what's going on throughout the body, right? Nervous system. So nervous tissue is going to very importantly have these special type of cells called neurons. So a neuron is a nerve cell. Neuron, nerve cell, okay? So a neuron is a type of very important cell present within the nervous system. Nerve cell. The support cells, there are many cells that are going to help to support those neurons, and they're called support cells. There's more names that we'll use for them. You look at the bottom of this slide here, and it says neuroglia. Okay? Those are the type of nerve support cells. Okay? I said to you that in the nervous system, it's about control, right? The nervous system is about control. If I were to, so take a look at let's look at our skeleton over here. So let's look over here. If I were to damage this part of the spine, if I were to damage it so much that I would damage actually spinal cord, would that affect what's going on up here as far as the function of the arms? This person still uses their arms. Down here. Then we call it paraplegic. They would have issues though with what? Do they really have control over what goes down below? No. How about though, if it's terrible, right? But people who damage the spine and they actually the cervical spine and they cause damage to the cord up here. And they move these. And so what goes on is that the nerve impulses, look on the board there, right? Smart board. Neurons carry signals called nerve impulses. That's that electricity, folks. That's the electricity that allows for you to do what you do. That allows for your muscles to work, your skeletal muscles, as well as allowing for all the organs in your body to function like they properly should. Nerve impulses, we can call them these nerve signals. They're also more complex terms called action potentials, but just nerve impulses, that's good at this point. You'll see here that these neurons, very, very important types of nerve cells, they have a nucleus, they have different material that supports and is present within the cell, the cytoplasm, extensions. So they have dendrites and axons. Dendrites will receive information, axons will send out information. So for me to be able to contract my biceps and my triceps to be able to do this, I need to be what? Receiving impulses via those axons to the skeletal muscle. Without that, they won't work. So this is why if you damage the nerve impulses in the neck, I can't really move my arms. I can't really move my legs. Now, there are some special cranial nerves. There are special nerves coming off of your brain that can still be undamaged, that can allow for you to still breathe on your own. But some people, unfortunately, even that's damaged and they can't even breathe on their own, right? So that's some sad stuff. These support cells we mentioned, so they are supporting those nerve cells, those neurons. All right, so before the break here, we're going to just end with this slide and talk about stem cells. So you've all heard of stem cells, I'm sure, right? And no matter where they get them from, whether they get them from fetal tissue or from actual what's going on as far as within the umbilical cord, right? Stem cells are very important, okay? And they can be very important. Now, again, I'm not giving you any type of political bent at all. Just telling you that stem cells are not just something that also we use in research, but they're present within you, folks, right? So these stem cells are present from early on, and they'll help to differentiate into certain types of cells. That's a good thing. So these will give rise to, like it says here, different types of specialized cells, okay? And so they have that ability. Now, in research, have we been able to figure out to take a stem cell and have it become whatever we want it to become? No, not really, okay? Because if we did, remember our example over there of the skeleton having the neck fracture and damaging of the cord in the cervical spine or in the low back and damaging the cord there. If we could be able to take stem cells, neurons, right, and create new neurons and such and fix those areas that are damaged of the cord, that would be a great thing. You'd be able to help people so that they would no longer be a paraplegic or a quadriplegic. We're not there yet. But we are at the point where we can take stem cells, and in particular, what we're doing is, and what they're doing is, they're taking breast adipose tissue. So, and actually, not even just breast, just adipose tissue throughout the body, right? And so, if a patient has a mastectomy and they have removal of a breast as a result of cancer, tumors, whatever it may be, right? And they're able to then take these stem cells of fat, stem cells of adipose tissue, do a liposuction. They treat the fat, right? They treat it. They don't just put it in there. They actually have to create a special solution and make sure that there are many of these stem cells. They could inject it into the skin where the breast, where the actual breast material was removed, right? Put this adipose tissue in, and it'll reproduce, and it won't produce breast tissue, but it'll reproduce adipose tissue, fat, so that it can fill up the area where the breast was removed, and so that it can still take the place. So can this take the place of different types of implants that are foreign to the body? And this way you're using your own stem cells, your own adipose tissue. That's a pretty cool thing. I have in my family, and I'm sure you all maybe be able, sadly, may be able to point to someone or say about someone that they are survivors or maybe have even passed away as a result. Breast cancer has hit many people, right? Many, many people. My mother is a survivor of breast cancer, and sad stuff, right? So if we can actually put healthy tissue into the body instead of this silicone or this water saline based types of and it's still plastic, folks. It's still a plastic that's going into there. As far as these implants are concerned, it's much better, much healthier for the patient. So stem cells, we're doing this, right? So this is and there's still research to try and figure out how it can help patients to live more healthy lives and be well. All right, folks, so online, I'm going to stop recording.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right, folks, very good. So we're going to move on with this chapter. Out of this chapter, there's an area specifically on the skin. I'm going to wait until Thursday to discuss that. In lab, I want to discuss a little bit more regarding the skin and the structures and such. So I'll wait for that on Thursday. So we'll cover the rest of what we have going on here in the chapter, as well as talking about homeostasis. We'll discuss that in just a few minutes here. So cell junctions. So think about this for a moment, as far as tissue is concerned, right? So I showed you here before. I showed you an example of the ends are present. I'll just put it for now. So that would be an example of simple columnar epithelial tissue. One layer, simple columnar epithelial tissue. It's just a big word for that, this type of tissue. And the nomenclature, how we name it, right? We talked about that. It's by the shape. So the shape, and layer or no layer. So the shape and the layer or layers present or no layers present, okay? And the epithelial tissue, that's what we showed you as far as the different types of epithelial tissue. So look at this for a moment and wonder then, so all of these tissues in this simple epithelial tissue, I drew the darker line there, they're next to each other, right? Now, how would it make any sense if they were next to each other and they weren't really anchored to each other? That'd be kind of weird, right? It really wouldn't perform the job, perform the function that it should, right? But if we have different structures present in order to anchor, in order to keep the different cells together, that would be a good thing. So you'll have, so knit the cells together, stop leaks from taking place, communication, meaning that there can be channels. There can be channels present between each of the cells so that material from inside of this cell, some of it may go into this cell and then into this cell. So that's what we mean by that communication channel. So you'll have these tight junctions, these adhering junctions, cementing the cells together, keeping them tight together, and these gap junctions that allow for then this connection of the cytoplasm. So look at this for a moment. We look at the cell. So we've got the nucleus, right? I'll just do one. Here's the nucleus, right? There's the nucleus. What's all this stuff in here? It's the cytoplasm, the guts of the cell. It can have other types of components present within, but that's all the other stuff that's not the nucleus in that cell. So that gap junctions, they help to connect that cytoplasm to the other cells, allowing for that communication to go between the different cells. Now you'll see here, as far as membranes are concerned, right? So you all have an idea as far as we've all here had some type of like issues with, how about maybe some of us, many of us have had COVID, right? And so what goes on as far as where are they testing? What membrane are they testing when they're trying to see if you have COVID or not, if you're positive? They go into your what? To your sinuses, right? And the membranes that are present there and the mucus that's present covering the membrane to see if you might possibly have COVID-19 or not. So you'll see here that membranes are thin sheet-like tissue coverings, right? And they'll allow for, and you'll see here the mucosa, this epithelial membrane pairing a sheet of epithelium with connective tissue is the mucosa. It's usually, it has some type of liquid present, this mucus. How about it in the oral cavity? There can be mucus and saliva, right? But if there's a liquid present, it's not dry. Any area of the body that's dry, that's exposed to the outer environment, if it's dry, those cells are dead. If it's wet, if it's moist, those cells are alive. So think of your eye with tears. Something that helps protect the cells of your eye, right? And the construction of your eye. How about your mouth, your oral cavity? There's saliva, there's mucus present, right? How about your sinuses and your nasal cavities, right? Same kind of a thing, right? It's moist. Okay, in other areas of the body, this is, if it's moist, live tissue. If it's dry, so your skin, right? Your skin, dead tissue. How about your hair? Same thing, right, folks? It's what's deep inside of your scalp, that's alive. Anything that's exposed to the air, that's dead. Because you go to a beautician, a barber, what do? They cut your hair and you're not like, it hurts. Because it's dead. It's dead cells, okay? So, move on. So these are different types of membranes that are present, okay? So we have mucus, serous, cutaneous, synovial. So that synovial, we'll start with that one first, just because you'll see here, the joints of your body. So look in the back here, folks. So let's go back to, let's look at the knee. So look at the knee. Understand that this is all the knee here, right? All covered, and there's all structures that will create an area that is hollow and where there's a liquid present, okay? So this way, when you're like moving, right? That joint is an open joint, and there's a little bit of liquid in there that helps to lubricate it. Have you ever had some type of have you have you ever had a car that you forgot to put oil in and that liquid dries out, and then you hear about people that like ruin their engine because they forgot to put oil in it? Not a good thing, right? Needs lubrication. Your joints, all your joints, right? So your joints in your fingers, they're synovial joints. Your shoulder, your hip, right? Your hip, synovial joints. They're hollow joints. They have fluid present within them. That's synovial fluid. Cutaneous membranes, we talk about the skin. Serous membranes, important. We talk about mucus, but serous membranes, when you're thinking of the lungs, when you're thinking of the organs of the body, the heart, right? The pleura, they have to have membranes that are allowing for a little bit of fluid to be present between the covering and the organ itself. All right, so everybody stop what you're doing for a moment. Have your hands together. Put your hands together. We're in class. No, we're not going to class. We're just going to put our hands together. And we're going to do this. Do this. What do you feel when you do that? What do you experience? It's hot, is it not, right? So here's the deal. Look at this part. This part. That's been there a while. So part. Right? If this stops eating, what happens to you? You'll like this. So it's constantly moving, right? So from like 60 beats per minute to like 100 beats per minute, around that, like 90 beats per minute, that's ringing. Okay? And so this is constantly moving. If it didn't have a protective covering with some liquid between the organ and the covering, would we start to end up building up some type of heat? Right? Are there conditions where that liquid dries up, or there's issues where it's not really present there. Can that be a problem? Can that increase heat? What does heat do? All right, so this morning I had to go to work early, so that's frying pan, put the frying pan on, put a little oil, throw the eggs in, salt and pepper. What did I do in order to coat those eggs? So if you add heat to a protein, what does that do to the protein over time? Cooks them. Yeah, it changes their shape. It changes what they are. Right? Because you don't no longer have an egg. You don't normally have that white, like the yellow, right? Kind of like the yolk not cooked fully, maybe it's like a different toast, whatever. But primarily, if you cook it, it changes. Okay. So what about if a young child, maybe an infant, has a very high fever? What can happen then? What can happen to? So look at our models over here. So what can happen to this structure? If I apply heat to this, and very high heat for a period of time, natural breathing, and that's a dangerous thing. So young kids, they'll run these high temps, right? But you don't really want them to run a high temp and too high of a temp for too long a period of time, because it can be very detrimental to the child. So having these proper coverings, really important. Preventing this friction, preventing heat, right? That's not a good thing. But understand that it is normal, right? That if we do what we do throughout the day, right? We exercise, we just walking around, living our lives, moving our bodies, skeletal muscles contracting, that will contribute what? It will contribute to the heat of our bodies, right? We're not cold-blooded, right? We do produce heat when we do function, when we are functioning. So that's important. But too much heat, there's that thing. Too much, not a good thing, right? All right, let's move on. And so here you're seeing examples of the different types of coverings. Okay. Right, just examples of the different types of coverings. And here, all the way to the right, you're seeing here that is a joint, two bones. There's cartilage present, and then there's this membrane present. And in the inner membrane is the synovial membrane. So this inner membrane, that pink, is the synovial membrane that produces this fluid that allows for this joint to have some fluid present so that it's moving properly. It's not having issues with movement. Take a look for a moment. So look at this image for a moment here. Look at this one right here. Look on the back here. So I will, folks online, I'll share with you these images that I handed out to the class, okay? But in particular, we're looking at this one that's showing you rheumatoid arthritis. So folks, take a look for a moment. Let me see if I can't share that with you all. I know it's on my, now don't judge when you see my screen, because my screen is full of all kinds of, I have to clean this up. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, very good. So now you're seeing what we're all seeing in the classroom. So look at where it shows. So look at this image and look at the top part of the image where it says, Oh, okay. Yeah. So I have it. Where's my? All right. So on this image here, so we're seeing that normal joint, right? So that's a synovial joint. It's a hollow joint. It's going to have fluid in that space there. Osteoarthritis. Have you ever heard that term, osteoarthritis, or wear and tear type of arthritis, or degenerative joint disease? Kind of a couple different terms they'll use. If you're doing what you're doing, this wear and tear, go ahead. Different. Yeah, different, but thank you. So that osteoarthritis, this is just as a result of this living your life and being active, and there can be some damage to the joints of your body, okay? So you see how the bones are very close together. They can even rub, folks. That's not a good thing, right? That would not be healthy. Look on the right side of that image and you'll see rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis can also affect what goes on with the joints. And it can affect as far as there's inflammation present and damage to the joints. And both are not a fun condition to experience. Most of us, right, as we get older, all of us will experience osteoarthritis. Okay. If you had an injury, right, doing some type of injury, you can start developing the early signs of osteoarthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is more of a disease process, and that's an autoimmune type disease, and it doesn't affect everybody. So you'll see that there, that osteo and rheumatoid arthritis, okay? Just showing you that there can be changes and damages that can take place in these synovial joints. All right, so let's go back to the PowerPoint again. Sorry, just moving this out of the way. That, very good, okay. So let's go. All right, now we're gonna go past the organ systems. We're gonna go past the skin. And we're gonna go to this where it says homeostasis. Okay, so homeostasis. Let me erase the board here. All right, folks, so when we think of this term homeostasis, it says there the body in balance. So what goes on, folks, is that when your body functions well, you're not sick, things are good. You don't think about what goes on with your body. So when your body has a process going on, or some type of temperament or something with disorder going on, it's not functioning as properly should, you know it, right? Maybe not right away, but you know it eventually. Things aren't working like they should. Your body is out of balance. Homeostasis means that there's a stable environment within, no matter what goes on outside of our body. So stability, stable environment inside of you, no matter what goes on outside. So how about this? It's raining outside. Go outside, I'm wet. Go outside, hot. Or go outside, it's cold. Right? Or go outside, it's dry. No matter what the environment is, no matter what goes on outside, your body is going to try and keep the inner environment at a certain temperature, right? And if it does, and if there is like if it's too hot or too cold, what are you gonna do? You're gonna shiver. If it's too hot, you're gonna sweat, right? But your body's gonna try and maintain this stability inside, no matter what goes on outside. That's homeostasis. That's the issue. Now, and this homeostasis is different depending upon what's called your body's called. Think about this for a minute. You're just walking along, kind of just chilling out, relaxing. Your body might have a certain level of your heart rate, your respiratory rate, how you breathe, right? Your temperature. It's different than on exercising real hard or hard when laying down. And also those conditions can be on demand. So really, the demand that's placed upon your body can affect what goes on as far as what's taking place short term in your body. But notice that really, on a regular basis, your body is going to maintain the proper temperature levels, the proper blood pressure levels, the proper chemical levels within your body. Those are all maintained via these homeostasis activities that the body will do. So there's a lot of fluid that's present within your body. So your organs are not in your body dry. There's always a little bit of liquid present within, because that's important to keep the cells healthy and well. It composes the body's internal environment. There can be this fluid, this interstitial fluid, and this plasma. Plasma is the liquid portion of your blood that leaks out of the tiny blood vessels, capillaries. Plasma. That contributes to the moisture present throughout the whole body. Okay? Now, these substances will enter and leave the interstitial fluid, this fluid that is around and covering the tissues. That's important. That's a healthy thing to take place. Each cell engages in activities to ensure its survival. That also makes sense, right? So that cells are living and they're a part of your tissues, which are a part of your organs, organ systems, right? The organism. So really, cells doing what they do and functioning properly, that's an important thing. Have you ever heard of mitochondria? Right? So, good. So mitochondria are involved in producing something called ATP. ATP is important for some of the activities that are required by the body. So these mitochondria are present within the cells, and they have a specific function. So cells have these specific functions, making up those tissues. Now, how does homeostasis work? How does the body maintain the proper chemical levels, the proper temperature, the proper blood pressure, respiratory rate, how you breathe? So how many breaths you take in a minute, that's your respiratory rate, right? So all of these different processes that go in the body is monitoring them and maintaining them. So you'll see here that sensory receptors, an integrator, and an effector. So the body needs to receive input, and that input will come to your brain. Your brain then will process that information and then determine what it needs to do as a result and go to these effectors. Okay? So takes in information, processes it, and then these effectors, the muscles, the glands, will respond to whatever the brain tells it to do. So the brain determines if differences exist between how the body is currently operating from how it should be operating, because the body knows. All right, now, how many of you, when you had your temperature taken, what was the temp that you would normally seem to read at? Remember when we were there checked? Go ahead. Was that what your body was reading? Okay. Now, that's normal, like we'll say like normal, 98.6 Fahrenheit. But many of us had a different temperature. What about some of you all? Anybody else? Did you have a different temp than 98? Was it like in the 97s maybe? Go ahead. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So mine was around that 97.5. Right? That's so interesting how there's variation in people, right? Did anybody else have in the 97s at all that you remember from reading? Might have been, right? If it was a little warmer, maybe it read a little bit hot warmer, right? But usually around that, 97, 98 mark. So sensory receptors will detect a stimulus. They'll detect whether your temperature has gone too low or too high, sends a signal to the brain, goes to the brain, then the brain will then determine what we need to do. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it too high? Is it too low? We need to bring it back to this set point. So write this down, please. This term, set point. So how about for blood pressure? So, we're talking about like 120 over 80. For heart rate, so this is your BP. Your heart rate, we're looking, how about we do like a 72? beats per minute. How about for your respiratory rate? How about if we do 15 per minute? So those are just examples of what a set point can be, right? How about, again, we talked about the temperature. 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. That's just a number of where the body knows, hey, this is healthy. And guess what, folks? There can be a healthy range so here I'm going to put the 98.6. So it could go maybe a point or two higher or a point or two lower, and it's still within a healthy range. You understand? So we can still keep this range of, how about like 98.8 or 98.4? And that would be a range, okay, that the body knows to maintain. So you'll see here on the slide, it says the brain determines if difference exists between how the body is currently operating from how it should, and it'll make changes, it'll adjust accordingly. Okay. So you're looking here and you're seeing that. So sensors in the cells in the eyes, ears, skin, everywhere throughout the body, there are these sensors, right? You touch something hot, you touch something sharp, what do? Now you're not even thinking about it when you're doing it, it just happens, that's a reflex, right? Withdrawal reflex. But still, those are sensors that are saying, hey, that's sharp, that's hot, remove away, you're not going to damage the skin. So that's the brain, and then the muscles, glands can respond to that activity. So here's the terms that I want you to know about how the body will then maintain. Give me one moment, I'm just seeing where we're at. Good. So negative and positive feedback. Everybody stand for a moment. Everybody stand a moment. Just stretch it out a little bit. We'll be finished shortly. Not too much longer to go. Shake it out a bit. All right. So think about this for a moment, right? There used to be an area where I was driving, and I'm driving. You ever go past those signs that have like they register your miles per hour, right? And so when we see that, we go, oh hey, we need to slow down because more than likely we're going to that. Or as Dr. Kroon would do on occasion, oh let's see how high I can get to register on. Not a good thing, but country roads. So what'll happen is that really, in the case of feedback mechanisms, and you can have a seat now, please. So in the case of feedback mechanisms, right, like negative feedback, if I see that the speed limit is too high and I'm concerned, you know, I don't want to hurt somebody and go over the speed limit, this and that, I will do what? I'll press on the brake, right? So I'll press on the brake, and what will I do? I'll come back down to that set point, the set point of say 35 miles an hour, 45 miles an hour. Understood? So that set point that's on the sign is telling you, hey, you know, here's the set, here's what you should be doing. And if it's going up higher, that's not a good thing. So negative feedback would bring that speed back to where it needs to be at that set point. You understand? If my temperature is too high, if my temperature is too low, the body will do something to raise the temp or to lower the temp, bring it back to that set point within a healthy range. That's negative feedback. That's how primarily the body functions via negative feedback. So it alters a condition in the external or internal environment to counteract a detected change. That makes sense, does it not, folks? Right? If your blood pressure is too high, right? Now you would hope that there would be mechanisms, but sometimes what goes on, folks, is that doesn't work out too well. And what do you need? You need medications, right? That can help with that. There are different things. So negative feedback, though, this is how the body functions. Maintains control mechanism for maintaining this stable environment, this homeostasis. So right next to homeostasis, write the term, two terms, stable environment. Homeostasis, a stable environment. No matter what goes on outside of the body within will try and maintain this stable environment so that you don't have a stroke, right? You don't get very sick and die. You don't start cooking your body parts by having too high of a temperature. You understand? It's very important to maintain this homeostasis. Now, in the case of positive feedback, so positive feedback, it does happen in a few ways that is healthy. Okay, so you see here childbirth. So look over here. Baby needs to come out with a healthy outlet down here, right? So the baby needs to pass through here. Pass through, right? So what's going to happen then with other structures present within? They need to expand it. They need to move it. There's going to be movement here that's going to take place. Relaxation, such. But baby will be pushing up against mom's surface. Okay? Initially, in order to allow for the cervix, this hole open, expand so that its head can pass through. Each time that baby's head is pushing up against the cervix, it's going to send information, it's going to send messages to the brain saying, hey, we want this baby to come out. So what are we going to do? We're going to then send more chemicals to the strength of the contraction in order to push the baby out, in order to allow for the areas of the body to open up and to allow for baby to pass. So it's going to keep on getting what? Lighter and lighter? Calmer and calmer. No. It's going to get stronger and stronger. And it's not easy. I was there for all four births of our children, and man, it's something. Okay? Really amazing. It's just wow. Honestly, it's incredible. But know that it does get stronger and stronger. So the contractions get stronger. And so we're sending more chemicals to the area to allow for them, those contractions to get stronger, to allow for them what? It's going to get more powerful to what? Baby is birth. And then it's going to come. But that's an example of positive feedback. How about if I cut myself? And I just it heals over time. You cut yourself over time, there's going to be a reparative action. Your body's going to repair when you cut yourself. How does that happen? What goes on? Well, part of it, we'll discuss a little more detail, but that there's going to be clots. There's going to be different cells that are going to create the clot in order to block the area so that more blood is leaving from the damaged tissue. Does that make sense? Go ahead. Sure.
Area turns a little bit darker.
Yeah, right. Because there's a lot more blood leaking into the tissue. See? Because again, too, know that, like, it's not just dry inside. There's all kinds of, liquid inside, but then there's spaces in there. And so the excess blood is going to also be in there and it's going to create that space. So your body's going to do all it can to continue to send more cells to the area, more, more liquid, more chemicals to the area, and it's going to create more and more until what? Until that hole grows. That's an example also of this positive feedback. So it intensifies the change from the original condition. It's going to go further away. So how about this? Positive feedback is not healthy in the sense of if my temperature goes high, and instead of negative feedback bringing it back to 98.6, how about if it keeps on going up, 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 as a result of some type of infection, right? Some type of process taking place, and you could die if it gets too high, right? It can cause brain damage, right? And your body's not able to calm it down. So what they do to you, they might put you in an environment that's going to cool you down very quickly, right? They don't really like to put you in like a real shocking type of a thing because that might cause an issue with your heart and such. So that's not good, but they still want to cool you down pretty quick though to get that temperature down to where it could be at a healthy level. Positive and negative feedback. So here you're looking at this next slide is just showing you here the stimulus, the sensors, the integrator in your brain, and the response that's going to take place. Negative feedback will bring it back down to the healthy range and to the set point. Positive feedback, it's going to go further away, except for in childbirth and in like the healing of like cuts in your body. Okay. Now, this next slide here is showing you just what I mentioned to you before about that when we just walk around, we just do what we do, we produce heat within our bodies. We're endotherms. We have heat from inside the body as a result of contraction of muscles and such. The core temperature is controlled mainly by metabolic activity. So not only just by the contraction of musculature, but also by the different type of activities that take place within the cells of your body. Metabolism, how your body does the jobs that it does in order to keep you well and healthy. Metabolism, this produces the heat. Vasodilation, so you asked before regarding the color. How about this? So in one instance, right, it's like you damage the tissue and you get the bruise. Right? But how about if I'm on exercise? And what happens to my skin color? What happens? Color? Red, right? Because what's going on? How about this? Even if you notice that it turned red, when that touch some skin as you're exercising, it's going to feel like cold, hot, warm, right? Because what's going on, folks, is that the body is trying to give off heat. Too much heat, it's not a good thing, right? So it's going to try, so you're going to cool off by sweating, but also by vasodilation. What does that mean? Blood vessels, right? These vessels, so what's inside of it? That's lumen, right? That's the inside of the vessel. If I make this vessel larger, that's called dilation. So this dilation of these blood vessels will bring more blood to the area. So red, right? Definitely feel it. It's going to feel hot, and that's going to relieve some of the heat that's produced inside the body. That's a good thing. So that vasodilation, then increasing the size of the blood vessels, the inner part of the blood vessel, more blood's going to come to the area. It's going to look like you're more flushed, and it's going to eliminate the excess heat. It's going to give it off, so your skin's going to feel hot. How's another way to cool yourself down? We talked about this, sweat. So sweating, that's also, like I said, we talked about those different types of glands. So sweat glands will produce this sweat that will help to cool you off. Evaporation from the body cools the skin. And here you're seeing as far as these are not good things, right? Not good responses, but these can happen as a result of you being exposed to heat. I remember, so I was in the Coast Guard. I was in boot camp. And we were area to go while we're fixing it. Except for when you're in service and you're killing you. And you turn kind of crazy. So I went during the summertime between my junior and senior year in high school. I went to boot camp. Everybody else went to the shore. I went to the shore. And so I went to boot camp, and they just like training you, and you're exercising. And we had this in the downstairs of where we live, in this called the squad. Downstairs, on floor, there was a big room. So imagine like you like double the size, right? Double the size. And there was like, man, over 100 people in the room, and you're all exercising, windows closed on a summer night. You're just like exercising. You have your weapon, your gun that you're holding out in front of you, and above you, and distances, and exercising, doing all kinds of stuff. It's really hot. It's summertime. And all the windows are closed. Not good, right? You know, like that was the closest I've ever felt to like passing out at that time. They didn't pass out, but some people did. Not healthy, not good, because what will happen is that your body gets overheated, and then it just what can a mechanism? So if your body realizes you're moving and you're contributing to be feeling so hot, what happens to the body? The body doesn't pull the plug. What happens to you? Kind of pass out. That makes sense, right? Anybody ever felt like that before? Like where this can occur. It's kind of a protective mechanism. So heat exhaustion, heat stroke, hyperthermia, these are all what can occur. And so we need to be careful during the summertime. We need to keep hydrated, right? We need to drink plenty of liquids. Now I'm going to drink because I said that. We need to make sure that we're okay and we're safe. What part of our population would you say can be susceptible to issues with heat? What do you think? Who do you think would be susceptible to that? Go ahead. Good, very good. Have you ever been to a nursing home or to grandma and grandpa's home, and you're like, it's like 90 degrees in here, and they're like, oh, I need to cover. It's like, I get fun. But there's issues that go on as you get older. Right? You're more susceptible. They feel cool even when it's warmer. Go ahead. Yeah, and so people will move to dry areas, to Florida, or they'll move to Arizona, or right, so they're trying to do things to, you know, get temperature. So how about in the Northeast here, right? So people will like older patients will they won't put on the air conditioning. You know, they might be like, oh, I don't want to pay the money for that, or I just don't like the air conditioning, right? They don't like the cool, but they'll put on a fan, right? So in the previous letter, Dr. Brown's Coast Guard, I was cooked professionally for a while. Chef school. There's a type of oven, right? Called a convection oven. You know what that means? Convection oven? You have any idea? What is it? Okay, that's all right. Convection oven has heat, but it also has fans blowing. Probably seen it. Even like the quick check, they have like the blowing type where it's like the fan going and there's heat, and it cooks things very quick. So we have our elderly in their homes and their apartments, and they're just sitting there like a convection oven, cooking themselves. Think about this, right? They've got a fan going. It's really hot, but they're not doing anything about air conditioning. They're removing humidity. And so that's bad, right? It's not a good thing. So we need to keep an eye on our elderly. How about our little ones? Kids, right? Infants and such, babies. They don't regulate body temp all that good. So we need to keep an eye on what's going on with them also. Because they can't tell you, hey, mom, I'm sweating here in all these blankets, right? I mean, they can't say that, but you can see that. You have to be aware of what's going on with them. All right, so here, this is just interesting as far as just showing you as far as temperature is concerned and what goes on. And in particular, folks, this inner area right here, right in the middle of your brain, it's called the hypothalamus. It's the thermostat of your body. This really helps to regulate in your brain what goes on as far as temperature is concerned. And you see all the different aspects of it. So here we're looking at responses to cold. So we looked at heat, responses to cold. So opposite of vasodilation, where we're bringing the vessels, making them bigger, bringing more blood, so releasing the heat. Vasoconstriction is we're making the hole, the lumen, narrow. We're making it smaller. Okay? So the inside of the blood vessels are smaller when we constrict. Right? Think of something constricting, making it smaller. Okay? Narrowing of the lumen. So you'll also have your hairs stand on end. Now, so the hairs are all, there's muscle attached to each of these hairs. Okay? That's pretty wild. It's called erector pili. These muscles are not skeletal muscle, right? They're muscle that are smooth muscle. You can't control what goes on, but your body will control. And if you're cold, those hairs will stand on edge. You'll get like goosebumps. Shivering also, involuntary muscle contraction. And when we talk about babies, babies can have more of this brown type fat present that is a thermoregulator and helps them to regulate their temperature a little bit better. Hyper and hypothermia both can kill you. Extremes are never any good. And you're seeing here as far as what goes on, just giving you a summary. And almost done. And here you're just looking at seeing an example of like a thermography and just seeing whether there's cooler or hotter areas as far as temperature is concerned and be registered on. Okay. Very good, folks. Excellent. We are done with the chapter and we're going to be finishing up on Thursday in the lab regarding skin. We'll talk about skin.